Hey, David, why don't Republicans focus on policy instead of culture war issues? Wouldn't it be better for them electorally? I don't know that it would be. And the reason that I say that is it's not clear to me that Republicans actually have the support to win on the issues. What was it that Donald Trump did that prior Republicans didn't do that essentially gave Trump the victory in 2016? It was that he ran a campaign based on cultural issues and personal attacks and fears about communism, socialism, Hillary, etc., where his voters didn't actually have to evaluate policy and say, does the policy actually sound good to me? Some examples where the Republican Party, if they were to run on policy, would have a problem. Abortion is still used to raise a lot of money by Republican candidates. But the truth is that the American public is more in favor of abortion being legal in most cases than it has at any time in the Roe v. Wade era. So if Republicans really made abortion a bigger issue, it might not be so good for them. If you look at the Republican perspective on taxation, when you really get down to it, I've said a lot of bad things about the populist movement and how they can bamboozle people. But one of the things that the more populist Republican base has gone towards is to be more hostile to tax plans that are just good for rich people. Now, Trump still passed one that is mostly that, but because policy was so secondary and the cultural issues were more important, Trump was able to achieve an electorate that really doesn't care very much what his policy is. Most of the things he promised, he was never going to be able to do, and it didn't even matter. No one actually held him accountable. And ultimately, what brought Trump down was his mishandling of the COVID pandemic. I maintain that if the COVID pandemic hadn't happened, and because Trump mishandled it, right, there's the idea, well, Trump could have handled it well and won. Yeah, Trump was not going to handle it well. If Trump didn't end up having to mishandle COVID, he almost certainly would have been reelected. And to me, when you say, why doesn't the Republican Party run on policy? It seems to me it's actually better for them electorally to run on these cultural issues. We're against critical race theory. Nobody can even define it. These people barely know what it is, but it gets so much oxygen. Think about the coverage of critical race theory on Fox News over the last 3 to 4 months. And then think of how it fires up the base and it spreads. I mean, these memes spread like wildfire. Money is raised. I'm coming out in opposition of critical race theory in schools. Donate to me. Imagine if the entire time it had been about like tax policy. They would not have gotten the attention that they did. And so to me, it actually seems, same thing with we're against communism and socialism. Joe Biden's making us a communist nation. You ask these people, what is communism? They have no idea. And this allows them to continue moving forward without ever really having to be accountable for bad policy by just not talking about policy. I actually am increasingly of the mindset that Republicans do better right now by talking about the cultural issues than they do by actually switching over to policy. Check out my segment from earlier this week, whether a culture war is even winnable, because that's another factor that the left has to consider. But I think it's disgusting in terms of the debasement of American political discussion that there's one party that doesn't even pretend to care about policy. That's really bad for the country. But I think it's probably, in a sense, the better choice for the Republican Party in terms of winning elections, because they have a constituency that wants to just fight and yell and scream and cheer about cultural issues. And they don't really want to deal with policy in any serious way. That's why Trump won in 2016. Were it not for COVID, he would have won in 2020 as well. Send me your thoughts if you disagree with me. I do want to hear from you. We have a great bonus show for you today. Sign up at joinpacman.com, get instant access, and we will see you then.